So I'm going to talk about the alien self. This is a concept that many parents tell us they find really helpful. Helpful in understanding how their minds work, helpful in reflecting back on how they were parented, helpful even in understanding some of what goes on between them and their children. Other parents have found it less helpful. Now, I can't know into which category you will fall, but I do hope you'll bear with me till the end of the video and then make your mind up. So, here goes, the alien self. You will remember, I hope, the video on how I know who I am. In that video, we talked about how a child develops their sense of self from being reflected, mirrored in the parent's mind repeatedly over and over and over again. A child may experience, and we gave the example and I'll show the slides again briefly, a child might feel something like grief, maybe for the first time or in a moment where they don't understand what's happening inside their body. They just have this distress. And they communicate this urgently to, let's say, the mother in this instance. She's able to recognize through connecting with the experience. It stirs some feeling in her, and she recognizes that her child is feeling something of a sadness or a grief. And she offers this back to the child. The child is saying, can anybody see me, hear me, understand what I'm feeling? And the mum is saying, I get you. It's okay, it's called grief. I see you, I hear you. Or, I see you enough to get close enough to understanding you that you will feel the warmth of my interest, the brightness of my illuminating beam, and in this way you feel recognized. Through repeated experiences of being understood, the child feels soothed, relieved, feels supported, and builds up real knowledge about himself, how he feels about things, how those feelings are expressed, how he is represented in the mind of this mother and anyone else that he interacts with. This is how he builds up his sense of self. Let's look at an instance where this goes wrong. We've just done the projecting beam, so this will be familiar to you now. Similar situation, the child is feeling this grief, doesn't understand what it is, communicates this urgently. But in this instance, maybe we have a mum who, through no fault of her own, has unresolved grief in her life. Perhaps no one helped her understand what grief feels like, helped her label it. And so some of what she feels is the child getting under her skin and threatening to open the door to some room she doesn't want to visit now. It's too scary. The child cries. Can anyone understand me? Maybe the mother retaliates with, stop being so angry. What are you doing to me? You're doing my head in. You angry, ungrateful boy. Now the child is presented with a problem. Here is the most trusted person in the world, as far as he is concerned. This is his mum. He believes in what she says. He believes in her view of him. So even though the experience doesn't match what he's feeling inside, even though he feels misunderstood, he will still take it in as real, trustworthy information about himself. And now he's got two things inside him, if you like. One is the unresolved grief that still isn't understood. And the other is now an image of himself that feels alien to him, of this angry, ungrateful boy. Now, it's just not possible for a parent to understand their children or their child repeatedly, perfectly, without getting it wrong. 40, 50, 60, 70% of the time. It varies, of course it does. So everyone, all of us, however well we were parented, we all have an alien self. Now, the strength of it, the power of it, the size of it will vary from individual to individual. The nature of it is going to be fairly unique to each of us because it's ours, formed from our experiences and in part from how we imagine it. But we all have one. And it amounts really to that inner critical voice that we hear in moments of depression or low mood that tells us that we're useless or rubbish. It's the voice that tells us if something goes wrong in the world, it's our fault, that we caused it in some way or we deserved it. What really matters is not the fact that you have an alien self. You do, I do, we all do. What really matters is what we do with it. Now, one thing we commonly do with it is we use our projecting beam to get rid of it. We put it into somebody else and we leave it there, or we attack it there. That gives us relief, but it also leaves us a bit depleted, a bit out of sorts with ourselves. It also puts us at risk. So let's say we're living with someone who very conveniently fits with a model of our alien self. Let's say they are abusive towards us. Let's say they're controlling of us. Let's say they sometimes dislike or hate us. Let's say they sometimes attack us. As difficult as it might be to experience the abuse from this person, it does afford me some relief from my own alien self. After all, they're holding it from me in a way. And if they're attacking me with it, I don't have to attack myself with it internally. And I might choose to stay with someone who's offering me this opportunity to locate my alien self in them, even if it kills me. Strange as it may sound. And I think this goes some way towards explaining how some of us will get caught in relationships that are fundamentally dangerous or unhealthy for us, but perhaps our alien self can be located in this person, and that can be difficult to leave, as well as many other reasons as to why those relationships are difficult to get out of. This may be one component. A second way that we deal with our alien self is essentially by equally trying to get rid of it, but getting rid of it within the self. One way is to dissociate from it, to cut off from it, to freeze it, to numb it with drugs, alcohol, behaviours that distract or intensify an experience and take us away from the experience of the alien self. One way is to cut it out, to express that through self-harm. In some ways, some people have talked about how they're trying to cut out the bad part of themselves when they're self-harming. Some people even attempt suicide as the only way, ultimately, to get rid of the alien self. There is a third way, and of course, you'll be getting used to this now in the Lighthouse program. It isn't an easy way. And that is that we bear it. That we recognize that it's part of us, but it's not all of us. And we have to accept that it belongs in our world. In the projecting beam, you saw how the wonderful image of the wolf, our raging anger that might come out in response to a child, that we project onto a child. We may have to live with that bit of us. We may have to accept that as part of our daily life in order to prevent us projecting it. And this goes for the alien self. We may have to accept that there is a part of us that at times can feel like it's going to absolutely overturn our boat, throw us into rough seas and leave us to drown. But you can survive it. You have survived it, probably many times already in your life, and you can survive it again. And particularly if you reach out to a safe harbour, to someone who can help and support. With their help, you can survive it and shrink the alien self. Finally, I think it's really about the size and strength of the alien self alongside what we call the agentive, or the self that can affect change, that can feel to be important and valued in other people's worlds and able to have an impact on their worlds and our world. We can do things that will shrink the alien self, and we can do things that will increase or expand the agentive self, the constitutional self. And this is one of the things we want to think with you about, and important for you to recognize what in your life feeds the agentive self and what can diminish or shrink the alien self. As always, look forward to your thoughts. Thank you.